Good evening, everyone. Author R. Weir here, Randy. Hopefully, you all had a good day. Nice and hot here in Colorado. Just as warm here as where my next guest is. He's in the warm South, so we're going to bring him up right now and get going tonight. And we've got Jim Nesbitt. Hi, Jim. How you doing?
Good to see you, Randy. Been a while. Hope all is well with you, and thank you for having me on board today or tonight.
No, glad to have you back. You were on the show. I was trying to look back how long it's been. It's more than a year. I think you've been on the show. Time goes so doggone quickly. You just never know. But good to have you back. You had a new book out and you asked to be on, and I said, sure. We just had to put you back a little bit since we had a pretty full schedule. But it's great seeing you again. And you're down in Alabama, right? Is that where you are these
Yeah,
days?
I'm living just west of Huntsville. Now retired, and the wife and I decided we like the little town we're living in. It's about 30 miles west of Huntsville, and we decided we'd stay and rather than sell the house and try to move elsewhere. So it's easy living.
And a lot of Southern football, right? College football, big and down in that area.
Well, I'm a Tennessee Vol, and I'm living in enemy territory. But I'm only 22 miles from the promised land, so I can go up to Knoxville, catch a ball game, and get bathed in the blood of the Big Orange anytime I feel like it. So, uh, no, close enough. Close enough. We're a loud and vocal minority. We Tennessee Vol fans down here.
Are you allowed to walk around the streets wearing the orange jersey or not?
I don't care. I do it all the time. In fact, my fence posts, fence gates, and fence around the house are orange and white. The gates are orange and the pickets are white. So, I'm that guy in my town.
Nobody's come along and tried to repaint them, huh?
Not yet, but you never know.
All right. Well, it's good to have you back on the show. So we had you on before, but for those who haven't don't know anything about you, and will give us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background, all that important stuff.
Well, as you know, I'm a recovering journalist. I spent nearly 40 years in the business, and a lot of that was spent on the road. You did a lot of roving as a national correspondent for a couple of outfits. I would tend to do long feature stories on could be a presidential race, could be a Senate race, could be a natural disaster, could be a big issue coming out of Washington D.C. on like grazing rights or uh, uh, conflict on the border, immigration, those kind of things, and enjoyed that. I did that for a good long while. Chased a lot of hurricanes and tornadoes, and you know, enjoyed that. Lord help me. But the main thing is I was doing that when I broke into journalism. It was in the era of when long format magazine length stories were the thing, and if you could pull off one of those, you can make a nice living. And I became what is known as a takeout artist. And it doesn't mean takeout Chinese, but that do a big long story on an event that's breaking across more than one day, like a week or two, and give a lot of background on it. So that set me up for writing books because you used the devices you used writing a fiction story in those journalism stories. So that it wasn't that huge a leap to start writing novels.
So, what hurricanes did you chase? Any big name ones?
Oh God, I missed Katrina. I was out of the game by then. Well, not out of the game, but I wasn't a roving correspondent anymore. Oh God, I can't remember the names of it.
Neil, any of those like the we
Yeah,
like Neil, that was one of the big ones, and
uh, Elena, the Coppertone hurricane. It's the one that started looking like it was going to go up past Christian, and it did a loop toward the Gulf Coast of Florida, and then came back in and went into Biloxi. I spent like 10 days on the road chasing that silly thing. So that was a lot of fun. You tend to you will buy a carton of Lucky Strikes and carry a big thermos of coffee and get a big car that can handle the buffeting and go get it, go after it, and stick your nose in harm's way. So that gave it made me an action junkie. I like that a lot. Did a lot of stories on wildfire policy, grazing policies out west, and uh, that's where I really fell in love with that harsh desert mountain country out in West Texas. So it just it's definitely an acquired taste, but I've got it, and I've not been able to shake it. So I've used it, used what I saw out there in all five of my books, and I think it's the perfect place to tell a story of revenge and redemption.
So, being a journalist for all those years, do you think you could survive? You talk about long form journalism. It's really short snippets. It seems like it's a lot different these days. Do you think you could survive in the journalistic world these days?
I got out because the profession as I knew it when I came in was gone, and I moved over to editing, and it seemed like every staff cut, I'd managed to survive, but I'd have 10 more items piled up on my plate, and it just wasn't, it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. I mean, Lord love those people that have toughed it out and tried to do the service to the community that journalism provides, but it's I won't say it's a dead industry, but boy, it's living on life support now. And witness what happened with the Washington Post with their huge staff cuts, and the Atlanta Journal Constitution. So ceasing publication, ceasing print publication. It's just it's sad to see because I was in it while the going was still good, and you really could do the Lord's work in terms of keeping politicians in line and going out and writing about things that are mattered to people, whether they knew it or not.
Yeah. So, was that what you loved most about being a journalist? Was is digging into that story and getting down to the nuts and bolts of it and trying to find the truth in the mire, as so to speak?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's worthy. I mean, it gives you a sense of a higher calling, a mighty sense of purpose. The flip side of that was that I chased a lot of hurricanes and plane wrecks and became quite the action junkie, and that's the other side of journalism. I mean, if you get to be a road dog like I was, you're chasing the latest big story. You're going. It's the action. What's the line? It was what was the actor's name? Tom Sizemore, the late great Tom Sizemore in Heat. He goes, well, Neil, to me, the action is the juice. So that's and I have to admit I was pretty addicted to it and loved going out and chasing things, and loved digging up the goods on somebody and having that showdown interview. That was always good. Look them in the eye and make them wince.
So, coming out of school and stuff, was that something what you always wanted to be when you were growing up? It's like, I really want to be a journalist, or were there other things you had targeted and journalism just kind of fell in your lap?
A little bit of both. I come from a long line of hillbilly storytellers from the western, the mountains of Western Carolina, and my parents instilled in my sister and I, a keen sense of place and who our people are, and that kind of set me up to, want to tell stories, and I had an 8th grade teacher who called my parents in and after some type of writing exercise and sat them down and said, this guy can be a writer. So you should, cater to that and make sure he knows that and make sure he gets, proper schooling for that. And then I got the journalism bug and, did that actually in high school a little bit and then got bit hard in college and never looked back.
So I'm assuming you love to write. You enjoyed writing. You also enjoyed reading. So who were your go-tos? When you write hard boiled, and that seems to be what you love to read. So do you remember that first book that really got, wow, that thing just, I love that.
Yeah, I went after the kind of the founding fathers of the American hardboiled and noir schools. Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, James M. Cain, and then on up the line, Jim Thompson, Charles Whittleford, the both McDonald's, although I don't like the Travis McGee novels too much. They're too schlocky. But his this is John D. McDonald. His earlier stuff on 50s and early 60s Florida, it was just marvelous. Really captured the sleaze and the lush glory of that state. So so by the time I decided to start writing one, it was inevitable I was going to, start writing hardboiled crime. It just seemed to be, for one thing, just seemed to be a natural route to go. And two, I'd read enough that I really considered it an American art form. I think hard boiled. What do they call it? Hard boiled or noir? I call mine hard boiled thrillers because I don't do whodunits. You pretty much know who the villains are and who the good guys are, and by the way, there's not much difference between them in my books. And what I found out in reading, and I try to duplicate that in my own writing, is that once you have your story and you're telling it, you can write about anything you want to in the course of telling your story. You can get into politics, you can get into music, the spiky relationship between men and women. I've dropped riffs about those crazy militia and Christian patriot guys I used to chase out in the West. So it's really kind of an open format, long as you remember that you're telling a crime story and come back to that, and never get too far afield. You can use it as a vehicle to spout off about just about anything. Or let's put it this way: have your characters spout off.
Well, you're living vicariously through those characters, right? So,
of course, and it's and one of the things I learned as a journalist was that facts are your friends, and I tell that to any young writer. Look, the worst advice you can get is write what you know. And if that's all you're writing, you're not going to go very far. It's a good point to start, but you should really strive to know more, research more, get a broader foundation, a more solid foundation. And counterintuitively, that causes your writing to just fly and gives you tremendous freedom the more you know. So there you have it, my writing advice riff for your audience.
Well, we usually do that at the end of the show, so anyone tuning in is going to get it early today. So and that one's there. So
yeah, we're keeping it mixed up, Randy. So.
That's right. Well, I've always been very freeform when it comes to the interview. So you love vintage cars and trucks, I saw on your website. So what are some of your favorites, and do any of them show up in your books?
I'll answer the second question first. Yes, they do. I own a '72 Cutlass Supreme ragtop.
Mhm.
It's resale red with a white top, and I've written about that car and one just like it. Only it's the more muscled up version, the 442 Olds, and it's Nocturne Blue with the 442 engine in it. And, I just love that old American iron. I used to drive old pickup trucks, and when my wife was moving down and retiring and moving down to Alabama, I thought, she's been such a good sport about riding in my old pickups. Let me get something we'll both enjoy. So I got this 72 Cutlass, and the first time I fired it up, I thought, why the hell have I waited this long to do this? So, and I smile every time I fire it up. It's a great. We'll just go nowhere. I mean, we'll just fire it up and go wherever we feel like going, and maybe stop off for a bite to eat, maybe not, and come back and feel like rejuvenated by just riding along with the little hair I've got in the breeze. And Pam likes to sit there and let me drive, and has no compunction to take my place behind the wheel.
So are you able to keep your cowboy hat on when you're driving with the rag
No,
top?
I know better than that. Well, yeah, I can. I've got some stampede strings on some of my hats. One of my straws. I couldn't wear this thing. I've noticed, hadn't worn it in a while. I've noticed my head, if anything, has gotten fatter over the last few years. So I would have to have this under calm weather conditions or indoors. But yeah, a couple of my hats, particularly the straws, have got stampede strings, and I'll tie them down tight and let it rip.
So do you get your fingers greasy? Are you able to work on those cars? I mean, those cars are a little easier
I,
to work on than the
I
new
am
ones.
the world's worst mechanic. I love to drive them. I love riding in them. I love looking at them. But, I mean, I can do minor stuff, but it always takes me two to three times more or longer. And invariably, I screw it up and have to call in a pro anyway. And I finally learned my lesson that, hey, you're making enough money. Why not, get uh, get a pro in here from the get go and get it done right. Now that I'm retired, I'll do a little bit more of my own work, and I've discovered I'm no better a mechanic than I was 10 or 15 years ago. So,
Well, I love those old cars because usually there's so much room in there to work on them too, compared to
oh
modern cars today where everything's just jammed in there. And
yeah. I had a '65 Bel Air, and it had that was my first car, and it was an old farmer's car, and it had been in a wreck, and you could tell the frame had been kind of sprung, but it had a straight six in it with the three on the tree shifter, and you open up that hood up front, and you could climb in that thing and
oh
work
yeah,
on. It's just amazing how much. I mean, miles and miles of Texas on either side of that six, and it really taught you how to shift gears because it was not a synchro mesh transmission, and so you had to put your tongue in your cheek and just get your mouth just right to shift it up in the second and down in the third, and it'd make a fool out of you or a believer, one or the other.
so is there a car you've had an eye on that you'd love to buy that you haven't bought that add to your collection there?
Oh God. Um, I think I'd love to have like a mid '70s Coupe de Ville, and
Uh,
just ride around town like that. Or an old high school buddy of mine tells me I need to have a Lincoln, like the car Frank Cannon drove in that old television show that what was it? William Conrad.
no, Conrad, sure.
You know, long hood, hardly any back end, and just a beautiful American land yacht.
Yeah, I don't know if you've watched the Lincoln Lawyer series on Netflix, but he has one of the old Lincolns like that too. The great big long,
Yeah,
I'm assuming 70s. That thing is just a tank.
actually,
Then he
man,
has a couple of new
like
ones too.
like a '60s, with
It
like
might be a
the
60s, yes.
Continental, and these are
Yeah.
like the ones my friend was trying to turn me on to were like the Mark fours and fives. They truly did come in the '70s, and they're basically two doors with huge front ends. So yeah, I don't know if I want to go that far, but I look at an El Dorado now and again.
Well, it's funny in the latest one, he's being framed for a murder, and they killed a guy and put him in the trunk of that old Lincoln with his wheelchair. And I remember my daughter going, "My gosh, how big is that trunk?" It's like you could get a dead body and a wheelchair in there.
It's a beautiful thing. You open up that trunk, and my God, there's a full size spare tire in there. I'd almost forgotten those things. Uh, and you find when I would take road trips, I found myself doing all the things my dad would do before a road trip. Getting the extra oil, getting transmission fluid, doing this, doing that. And one time I just whipped into an auto zone and came out with 2 quarts of transmission fluid and 2 quarts of oil and threw it in the trunk, and then thought, why did I do that right now? It's like, well, it's because my dad used to do it that way. So I think he likes to go on ride-alongs with me.
All right, so you lived. I'm going to read here all the places you've lived. At least I think you lived. At least worked there. So you're in Alabama now, Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, Texas, and D.C.
Yep.
So you've covered a lot of territory there in the South, and you kind of went up the coast there.
Yep.
So
It,
what of those did you love? Like them? Was there any states there I'd love to live there? Or I know you said Alabama is where you like now, but in some places maybe you didn't like so much.
I lived also in St. Louis. Didn't much care for that.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I lived in Raleigh, Eastern Carolina. You can have that, but I love the Western Carolina mountains
Yeah.
and East Tennessee, and I always thought I'd come back to there, but that's just not the way life broke. And I do love the area around outside of Washington D.C. Not so much D.C. itself, but the Maryland side of D.C. and then into Northern Virginia. Once you get away from the suburbs and get out beyond Winchester, it's just beautiful country. I like that quite a bit. I also owned horses at the time, so beautiful riding country. Just when you used to every once in a while cross the Potomac at low water on a horseback, just like Robert E. Lee's boys at White's Ford. So
Did you have a musket with you at the time?
no, it's just. But I tell you, you could feel those ghosts going by.
Yeah.
I lived about 2 miles from the C&O Canal towpath, and his troops went right up that towpath on their way up toward Sharpsburg or Antietam, and that area is just redolent with history.
Yeah.
So just lovely country to live in.
Some history good, some history bad, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's history. I mean, it's good and bad, and we need to understand it all so we can, avoid its pitfalls and learn from our mistakes and perfect that union that we've promised ourselves we'd live eventually.
All right, so let's talk about your Earl Burch books. So you have a new one, and I know you've had several. So what was, and I don't have a copy of your first book to throw up here, but what was book one in the series, and how did it come to be?
Book one is, the one that started it all. It's the last second chance, and it's where I first introduced everybody to Earl Burch, and kind of I really didn't know what I was doing in terms of was I writing a novel that was I writing something that would lead to a series. I'm definitely a fly by the seat of the pants kind of guy,
Mhm.
and I think early on I developed a kind of the attitude of, well, I'm going to take this character and just throw him in the briar patch and see whether he comes out alive. And in that first one, I decided I wanted a character who was more like every man, not super sharp or super cool like Frank Bullitt or Sam Spade. Uh, Somebody who gets knocked around quite a bit, but is dogged and determined and has a code that he sometimes forgets to live by. And but when the chips are down and it really gets down to uh, the crucial time in either a case or action, he rises to the occasion and remembers who the hell he is. So, and I think over the course of the books, you've got a much more matured character who kind of lives exactly that way. In the first book, he's chasing after the guy who killed his partner when he was on the Dallas police force. He was a homicide detective who eventually got thrown off the force, basically for being a terminal smartass and bucking authority way too much. And I got to say right now that that's not at all autobiographical, but the he gets a petite blonde walking through the kitchen door of a cafe that would feed him after hours, and she's pointing a 45 at him, and she wants to haul him off go up to the mansion of a local drug kingpin, and along the way she tells him that his that the guy who killed his partner is still alive, and don't you want to go kill him? And so that starts off kind of a very violent waltz across Texas that stretches from Dallas down into the hill country around San Antonio and Austin, and then eventually winds up more in southwest Texas along the border, and it and on over into northern Mexico, where he does track down the drug lord and uh, but however, he doesn't get the pleasure of killing him. Uh, his blonde partner, Carla Sue Cantrell, who's just a marvelous character who rose up out of nowhere, seized control of the keyboard, and took over the book, and wound up being a great foil for Ed Earl. And their banter back and forth defines them both. And they're both, hard nosed, witty, smart ass people, and can take a rhetorical punch as well as give one, and uh, and she winds up killing the guy that killed his partner. He winds up having a broken jaw and is ending the book uh, in a ratty old motel room bed, being tended to by uh, some cartel types that the blonde is paid off, and he ends the story as I originally intended, with more pain, physical and psychic, and doesn't get the girl. So
Oh man. So Ed Earl Burch. So was that always the name you had, or how did that all come to be? Very southern.
everybody, it's not just Texas, but it seems to be particularly true in Texas. A lot of guys will either go by first and middle name, because their grandfather and their father and their great grandfather were all named James Edward, or Edward Earl, or whatever. And so um, you'd either have to go by the initials, EE or EW or whatever it was, or you'd go by the full name, whereas one of your next one down might only go by Ed. So that seems to be just something you run into all the time in the South and in Texas. I had an editor that worked for in Orlando and Dallas, and we were both fans of Dan Jenkins, the sports writer who, wrote Semi Tough that got turned into a movie, and then a great golf book called Dead Solid Perfect. And there's a character in that book, both books, called Jim Tom Pinch. And I would always call this editor, whose first name was Jim, I'd call him Jim Tom. And then Jim would sit there and say, "Well, Ed Earl." And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to use that name. And what last name do I want to give him? Well, Burch. That sounds good. Let's put those two together. So, actually, the Burch came from a nickname a buddy of mine and I, playing on the newspaper softball team, gave each other, Buford Puckett and Don Earl Burch. And so I poached his nickname and then used the version that Jim Jennings gave me, and decided to use Burch as well. So that's how that came about. It's a convoluted tale, and it's would have been better told over whiskey and a cigar, but I'm a shadow of my former saloon self.
So the new book, which book is this? So this is the newest one. And so how many books has there been in the series so far?
This is the fifth, and I had no idea whether, after I'd finished the first one, whether I had a durable enough character to kind of anchor a series. But turns out I do, and I'm going to keep him around for a while, and I enjoy writing him. So this current book, one of the things he's longed for. There you go. How do you like that cover, buddy? I got a rattlesnake hanging off a cross coming at you. And this current book, he's a little longer in the tooth. He's probably pushing mid-50s, and one of the things, he after getting tossed off the Dallas force, he spent about 20 years working as a private investigator, and became pretty good at it, but it wasn't soul satisfying. He learned how to chase down financial fugitives from the savings and loan bust that kind of wrecked Texas banks, all a lot of other banks in other states as well. And but it's not what he was born and bred to do, and which is being a manhunter. And finally, after he handled a couple of cases out in West Texas, some lawmen out there watching him do his thing, and figured that he's exactly the kind of guy we need to bring out here and deal with the cartels, deal with the corrupt lawmen who have sold out to those cartels. And he's a hard man, and let's give him a badge. And this is fulfilling something that he's longed for years, because he wants that higher purpose. And like all things you long for, if you get it, it's like, well, now what do I do? Uh, and he finds out it's kind of like the dog that chases the car and finally catches it. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And he finds out it's not everything he hoped it would be. And he finds out, well, he's been on his own for too long, and he never was a guy who played by the rules anyway. But that's become more pronounced over the years, and he's got to get used to getting in harness again, taking orders, pretending at least to play by the rule book, and get along with his fellow officers, and that kind of chafes. And he's kind of fallen out of that habit, and has become kind of a semi-outlaw himself, and he's realizing the cost of getting what he longed for all those years. Plus, the guy he's working for, who one of the lawmen who gave him the badge, is a guy who he saved in a shootout down on just south of the border, maybe a decade before this. And as long as they were still 500 miles apart in Dallas and this mythical town I've created called Favor, Texas, the they got along fine, and they had a kind of a spiky relationship, but they would always kind of arrive at a friendly table, and they'd share a drink, and they'd smooth things out. Well, now that he's walking in there to the sheriff's office every day, it turns out that the sheriff is starting to hate him and resent him a lot for saving his life. And that's where the title comes from, the fatal saving grace. Some people just can't stand the fact that you bailed them out of a tight spot, or saved their bacon, or helped them, up the ladder. And when they look at you, they really don't want to know you and would like for you to go away, because you're a reminder of when they were weak and when they needed help. And unfortunately, that's how this guy is kind of turning on Ed Earl. So that's the kind of the explanation behind the fatal saving grace.
So, Ed, does he ever travel outside of Texas, or do all his stuff always stay in Texas?
He seems to stay in Texas. He'll go across the border into northern Mexico, and generally for drug deals, shootouts, and other nefarious activities, hunting a fugitive killer. And it's kind of like some of James Lee Burke's latter day characters. There were Texas Rangers who would fly the black flag at night and go after a drug dealer, and to basically shoot him, not bring him to justice. So Ed Earl's kind of like that. Now, in this book, he's got the badge, but he's got the problem with the sheriff, but he's also got something he loves, which is he's chasing a serial killer, and it's a guy he thought he had killed in a desert shootout 4 or 5 years previous. The guy turns out to have 9 lives and is now pursuing Ed Earl and a woman he's saved from the clutches of the cartels maybe a dozen years beforehand, and they're both on this killer's list. He's kind of working a ladder of revenge, and Ed Earl and this woman are both high up on the ladder of people he wants to kill. So that's a fun dynamic.
So it's funny you mentioned that whether he was durable enough to survive. through your series, and I was thinking durable enough from what you're all putting him through in every book is like physically he's like I think of Lindsey Vaughn, all the different pieces and parts that have been broken on him and having to be put back together again.
Well, yeah, and he's gotten busted up quite a bit in the earlier books, and now I thought, well, I'm going to age him a little bit more and make him a little more rickety without making him a poster child for Geritol, and without. I mean, he can still take a punch. He just can't move as fast as he used to, and he's discovering that his eagle eye for shooting is nowhere near as sharp as it used to be because he emptied a magazine into this serial killer and heard the bullets smack into him, and apparently didn't hit the guy nearly enough to kill him. So he's having to maybe go get some contact lenses, get some reflective sights put on his 45, and it just really ticks him off to no end that he's got to do this. So, I'm having fun doing that, and him having to deal with these, I guess, increased maladies of advancing middle age and living a hard, rough life already. And it's a fun thing to do and to play with.
So, do you find writing therapeutic for you? Is that something where you can kind of get some of your life's frustrations out in your books and take it out on your characters? How do you feel about that?
In the past, I admit to killing off an ex-wife or two, and some former bosses of mine have bitten the dust. But nowadays, it's just I'm on much better meds these days, Randy, and I don't drink nearly as much as I used to. So, I've kind of exercised a lot of those demons, but I remember them, and I remember those times and days, and particularly remember the characters I rubbed elbows with in saloons and while doing journalism, across this great nation of ours, and so that's I've still got a tank full of or an attic full of memories and people I know and events that took place that I can draw on for quite some time, probably until I kick the bucket.
So, are there any characters in this series that you thought about maybe spinning off, or have there been any other ideas or books that you want to write that you haven't written yet?
Well, it's funny because I got roped into signing a contract with an outfit that I won't name, and they gave me a ridiculously distant pub date. So I started writing a Western, well, semi-Western, set in the 20s in an old town in the panhandle of Texas. And I've got to figure out a new character, and it's not going to be Ed Earl. It's going to be a guy who's kind of been a gypsy lawman and Pinkerton agent, and is asked to come in and clean up, help a character who's going to be modeled after the old legendary Texas Ranger Frank Hamer, clean up this old town, and it's loosely based on some of the old towns that boomed up in the 20s and 30s in Texas, and it's also loosely based on Hamer's career, who did clean up a couple of old towns further down toward in East Texas. So I had gotten about 7 or 8 chapters into that, and I think eventually, once the promotion campaign for the current book kind of dies down, I'll get back into writing that one. And it's, it was like, it was like chipping away at granite for a while because it was, brand new territory, and I had to research, the oil business back in the 20s, and really kind of dig deep to figure out what went on back then, and how I could use it. And but I gotten to the point where it it started to break and flow a lot better, and I understood where I was going with it. And now I've got, the trick is going to be picking it back up and seeing whether I can, make it flow again.
Maybe a distant relative of Ed Earl's, huh?
He shares a lot of characteristics, but it's not Ed Earl. So and the I'm trying to think of the main character's name. It's been so long since I've looked at the book. He's another two name guy, Charlie Mack, and
Charlie Mack.
And he he's very much a loner. As when he gets called to help out clean up this old boom town, he's been working as a stock detective, kind of a Tom Horn type of character, only smarter about not getting caught killing rustlers as Tom Horn, which is what wound up happening to Tom Horn. And he's a guy that's worn a badge, but has worked for both the good and bad people. If you've been a Pinkerton, you're working for the moneyed interests, and your heart is definitely not pure. So, I did, as part of my research, did run into, or came across an old ranger named Charlie Siringo, who wrote 2 or 3 books about his experiences as an agent for the Pinkertons, chasing after rustlers, chasing after the hole in the wall gang, and going after people. Got into some union busting in the mines out west in Idaho and Montana, and learned a lot about how those guys operated by reading Siringo's biographies. And they're watered down biographies. The Pinkerton Agency made him change the name of the agency, the guy he was working for, and change a lot of the names of the characters that he met. So it's almost fiction as it is. So you can take some license with it.
It's kind of like Carmen, Carmen Amato, you got to get the approval of the book before you put it out, because non-disclosure agreements and all the stuff, the CIA and the FBI, and Pinkerton was the same, I'm sure.
He wrote the book, and the Pinkertons, we don't, we're the eye that never sleeps. We don't want you giving away our trade secrets, buddy. So he interesting character, though. I mean, even with all that, he's still, his tales are just marvelous, and they're written in that Baroque style that you almost felt like you're listening to dialogue from Deadwood. It wasn't the the Gary Cooper silent cowboy kind of thing. It was the rich Baroque language of the West, and Charlie, it was fractured Baroque language, but Baroque language nonetheless.
Well, hopefully you can capture some of that in the book. So
I'm looking forward to getting back into that one.
So we've got about 50 minutes. All right, so we're going to kind of wrap up with the last few questions here. But I always ask, and I've asked you this question when you were on before. I'll ask you again, but I'm going to twist it a little differently. So, bringing life to characters, name of the show. and I always ask everyone what you do to bring your characters to life. Well, I'm going to ask you about Ed Earl. There's been a lot of hard-boiled private eyes out there. Easy, easy. So, what made Ed Earl, when you were thinking him up in your head? What did you do to give him so he was, he obviously has some of the tropes, I'm sure, of the genre, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's things about him says I got to make him different. He's got to stand out.
Yeah, I think the way you, well, let's go right to the, what makes him different. He's a lot quicker on the trigger than most private eyes. He he
Shoot first, ask questions later, huh?
yeah. I mean, he's a guy that forgets his code if he gets tempted by money or women, and he's got to kind of be confronted with a catastrophe, a death of a close friend, something that offends his basic sense of justice, like like a murder victim, that before he snaps back into following his own kind of fractured code. Um, he this doesn't necessarily make him that different than some of James Crumley's private detectives, but he cusses a hell of a lot. And he drops f bombs all the time. So, and none of my books are Sunday school books. So, uh, he likes women, but he's old school and can be accused of being a womanizer. But he in his way he respects women and thinks they're far tougher and far wilier than men. And as a result, gets along famously. Unfortunately, he's fatally attracted to women who can stick a spike in his heart and twist it, and he always winds up, kind of having to nurse himself with some extra whiskey when they leave him like a smoking wreck. So. And beyond that, it's just who he is, how he talks. He's a terminal smartass. He does not like authority and will almost give it the finger at the drop of a hat, and is hard to get along with. Very unpredictable. He may decide to pull out a sap and start beating on somebody before uh, the niceties have been exhausted, because he's a man in a hurry. So, one of the things that I looked at was I didn't want a guy. I didn't want a guy who played by the rules, and I didn't want a guy who he's not exactly an avenging angel. He doesn't have that high feeling of or sense of morality. He just sees things and it's wrong in a kind of basic way, and he wants to right it. He doesn't moralize, and he doesn't think of himself as that avenging angel. He's it's one of my signs. I think you probably saw it at Killer Nashville. No halo, no wings, no mercy. I think that holds him up pretty
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So you feel like he's evolved some through the series as well?
Yeah, I think he's less. How to put it? I mean, he was just a mess after the first book, and was popping pills and slugging whiskey to kind of stay mentally stable. He kind of had PTSD after the first book and the second book, and was kind of hosing his demons down with whiskey and Percocet. Uh, Eventually, he started weaning himself away from the pills. He still drinks a hell of a lot of whiskey, but um, and as he's aged, he's I don't want to say mellowed, but he's gotten a little calmer and is not as nearly frenetic as he used to be. And the demons seem to be no longer plaguing him, and he's able to keep them down in the hole, as the old theme song from The Wire. Got to keep that devil down in the hole. They seem to be, staying put a lot more than they used to, and they don't torment him nearly as much. In one of the books, he's riding through a stretch of West Texas between Marfa and Presidio, and he's noticing the scenery, and he really likes both the flatlands and the stark desert mountains, and he likes it because it's country you can see for a long way. And he thought to himself, if I lived out here, I could see those demons from a long way off, and it'd make it a lot easier for me to keep them down in the hole. So that's one of the things that appealed to him.
So you mentioned whiskey. I'm assuming it's a Tennessee whiskey. Does he have a favorite?
I gave him, when I went to Tennessee, I used to drink Evan Williams whiskey because that's all I could afford as a poor student. But when I started working, I drank George Dickel, which is Tennessee's other sipping whiskey and far less touristy than Jack. And the only problem with that, and now that I live about an hour away from the Dickel distillery, I'm back to drinking that. Plus, it's honest 90 proof whiskey. But when I was on the road, I could never find it. So I switched to Maker's Mark because somebody always seemed to have Maker's Mark. So he drinks Maker's Mark, and he's so far in, he's a Maker's Mark man. He still smokes Lucky Strikes with a Zippo lighter, and those are hallmarks. And if I had him drinking a different whiskey, I'm afraid half my readership would probably walk away from me. So.
All right. So, what advice do you give to aspiring authors? Anything? Any words of wisdom?
Yeah, and I kind of stole the thunder of this question earlier, but it's like the two things I tell people is, one, there's no magic bullet, no silver bullet. It's just sit your butt in the chair and write, and when you're not writing, read, and read authors who are better than you are in the hopes that you can get better, and then write, just stick to it, and I don't keep a strict discipline, like I'm going to write from 9 o'clock to
Right.
3:30, but I do sit down and write until I've finished either a chapter or finished a section or scene that I've been working on, and then I get up and walk away from it. And I'm more likely to spend 6 or 7 hours on a Sunday, writing straight through, than I am getting up at 5 and writing from 05:30 to 10:00. I just can't keep that much of a schedule. I kept a schedule all my life, and now I'm retired. I'm going to write when I feel the writing is good, but I'm also going to, once I get into it, stay with it and write until it gets done properly. Now, the other thing I tell folks is ignore people that tell you write what you know. That is just like that's barely a starting point. facts are your friends. The more facts you build, the more you learn about something, the more you build on what you already know, the more new things you learn. You're building yourself a strong foundation for your writing to be built upon, and it's counterintuitive, but you'll find that strong foundation is enormously freeing, and your writing will fly as a result. At least that's what I found, and you know, I'm a pretty decent storyteller, so obey what I say, kids. Ignore those other people.
Well, and that first part of it too, I think that's kind of the pantser mentality too, where being a pantser, and I'm one as well. I don't have a strict regimen. It's when those ideas are flowing through your head, you get them down, you get them out of your head, you write them down, then you stop, and then the next idea comes, and you go to it, and maybe those characters are around, buzzing around your head, talking to you, and all that stuff. And it sounds like that's kind of the same mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I'll as I get older, I'll tend to write things down more. But once I start writing, I throw that in a drawer and I don't look at it until I'm way down the pike and I want to see, okay, did I stay true to my original idea, or did I take it, this way, or did I forget something, or just it's kind of a nice roadmap to look at. But then you put it back away and you write on to the next section. I had one book where I got to a point and I wasn't really paying attention to or even thinking about the outline. And I got to this scene and I realized, oh man, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different other things were supposed to happen before I got to here. And I had to go back and pick a place where I could start a bridge to that point and include those other things. It reads fine, but it would have been nice if I'd kind of remembered ahead of time.
Well, that's part of the fun, and I was on a panel at Killer Nashville last year, talking about being a pantser.
Yeah,
writing yourself into corners, and sometimes just I always thought that's kind of the fun part of it.
Yeah, can I get out of this one? What the hell have I written myself into this time? And can I back my way out of it? And how can I fix this train wreck? But yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I mentioned one of my characters, the ever spiky and vivacious Carla Sue Cantrell, who loves conning drug overlords and other nasty characters out of their money and ripping them off. She was supposed to be just a minor character that got Ed Earl from point A to point B, and she just exploded out of the laptop. Actually, I was working on an old Apple Cube, and just took over the novel. I mean, and if I'd been a plotter, she'd have never done it. She would have been that A to B character, and we would have never seen her. I've got people that, like, men and women, are saying, "Is Carla Sue going to be in this book?" They got some people who like her more than they like Ed Earl, which is fine by me. I kind of like her more than I like Ed Earl too. So
maybe she deserves her own book someday. Kind of an anti-hero, right? So
I've thought about, well, Ed Earl's enough of an anti-hero unto himself, but writing something that with the without the two of them together is just kind of like, it's like separating Siamese twins. I don't know whether I can do that or not.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't feel right to me, but who knows? Maybe I'll do it someday.
Well, and I've had people tell me about some of my characters. Oh, that character should get their own book, and I'm like, it just I don't feel like they can carry the book. They're good as a side character, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those. It's like they work best together as opposed to separately.
Yeah, and that dynamic, defines both of them far more than if they weren't together. If they weren't, kind of sparking and firing spiky lines at each other, that you wouldn't know nearly as much about both of them if they were just going along in the story by themselves. So I think it's invaluable, and it's almost like that heightened definition of character is it's almost unconscious, and I think you'd lose that without even knowing you lost it. But you'd be reading it and going, something's missing here. There's not the vitality that you have with the two of them together.
All right. Well, we've gone over an hour here, so we'll start wrapping up. So, do you have any events you're planning on doing this year? What's
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go to Killer Nashville, and I want to go up to that event up in Columbia, Maryland, that Dana King is really involved with. What is it? Creatures, Crime, and Creativity. He and his wife have been bugging me to go up there for the last couple of years, and I want to go up and do that. And a good friend of mine up in Philadelphia, Jamie McCrone, he and I keep swearing we're going to do a book event together up in Philly, which is, I was born in suburban Philly, and went to my 50th reunion back in 2024. And I kind of have a hankering to go back there and see it. And so we may get together with some Dick Belsky and me and Jamie and do a book event at his favorite bookstore. So other than that, I'm going to hit live events like the Franklin, Tennessee, their Spring Fest, and try to find some more outdoor events as the weather gets better. And I clean forgot, in March I'm going back out to Nacogdoches, Texas, for a Noir at the Bar that's run by a guy named James King, who runs the best combination T-shirt shop, antique store, and bookshop in East Texas. And he's being helped by a guy I've gotten to know at Dallas Noir at the Bar events named Sweet Johnny Westner. And the headliners are Champion Mojo storyteller Joe R. Lansdale himself, author of the Happen Leonard series, and a really good writer by the name of Harry Hunsaker. His latest book was The Murder of Rose Doucette. Harry's a really good writer, and he's got a beautiful head of white hair that he sweeps back. It's almost like a pompadour. And we always say, it's Harry the hair. So, it's going to be it's an event that James has done a lot of the publicity for already, and it's a big deal in Nacogdoches. May seem like a small deal elsewhere, but I like the people and I like the town.
So I got a couple other pictures here. You gave me this one here, looking very sophisticated there.
That was when I ran a alt weekly in St. Louis, and that was the publicity photo. So, boy, look at the fact I still had black hair back then.
I was just saying, it's dark. He's got a lot of dark there.
Yeah. It's just frosting at that point. But look at me now. I'd still have the same hat though.
Yeah, and the cigar.
Of course.
Although, you got that ring too on your finger?
No, I got a different one on my finger. Can you see? Let me see if I can get it.
Almost looks like a mood ring.
Yeah, it's almost. It's a what is it? Mother of pearl, but dyed blue. So yeah, I used to have friends of mine and at least one girlfriend who said you wear too much jewelry. You wear more jewelry than I do. And it's like, no, I don't think that's right, but I do like silver jewelry. So, and I've always believed that a man must maintain his affectations.
All
That's
right.
the,
Well, there's your website.
yep.
That's the best place for people to contact you. Do you put out a newsletter, have a
I
blog,
do.
anything?
I do, and sign up for that, and you can listen and read my screeds about where I'm going to be, about writing, about reviews of the book, and where I'm going to be appearing, and just about so much stuff I've put out that you're going to get sick of me if you sign up. So, but that's the best. That's the best place, and you can buy all my books, off of that website. So, pick three.
And on your books, do you need to read them in order, or can you pretty much kind of jump in the middle?
You can. I've written them as standalones, and so that you don't have to necessarily read them in order. But a good friend of mine, really good book reviewer out in Dallas, Kevin Tipple, he chides me every time I say that. He says, "Oh, you've got to read them in order," and he's read them all. So
Right.
he may know something that I don't, but that's not how I write them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, that's what I tell people, at least on my private eye series too. You can, I've had plenty of people start in the middle. Now you might get a spoiler or two starting in the middle that may reveal something that happened, but you're not going to be lost.
yeah, and that's that there's guys who will deliberately hold back information and make you and set you up to where you have to get that next book to find out what's going on. But I, I can't do that. I refuse to do that. I just there'll be some things that get resolved in the next book that were unresolved in this book, but that's not necessarily a deliberate thing. I'm not holding back. Uh, Please buy my next book. I want to make sure you buy my next book. That's just wrong for the reader.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks, Jim. Appreciate you being on. I don't know if there's anything else you need to bring up or talk about. We've gone about an hour and 15 minutes.
I think I've talked your ear off. So once again, Randy, I appreciate you having me on board, and always a pleasure, and enjoyed it. So take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, it was great having you on. Right now, we're thinking we're going to go to Nashville. We're not sure, but if we do, I'll be sure to run you down. And
Yeah, and if you don't see me, just look up Carmen. She usually knows where I'm at.
yeah, Carmen's usually nearby, and I probably could find you in the bar too when it's
No,
drinking time,
that's a sure bet. So
right?
I'll buy you an adult beverage.
Yeah, yeah. If you're staying in a hotel, they give you get a few free coupons. But yes, we always it's always nice to get an adult beverage to cover the cost of that hotel bill. So
Yeah, at least one adult beverage, if not
at
more.
least one. All right. Well, thank you, Jim. Good to
Good.
see you again. Take care, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see you in Nashville
All right, brother.
in August.
Yep, it'll be here before we know it. Now, how do I get out of here?
I will remove you from the scene, and you can just disconnect.
All right, brother. Thank you again.
Yeah. Take care. All right. Thanks, everyone. My next guest will be February 17th, which will be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. It'll be Lisa Kovala who will be on. And I got to do some research on Lisa because I don't know her book. So I'll be spend a little time on that. And be sure to check the podcast now is available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Pretty much any podcasting now, it is available for your listening and watching pleasure. So if you don't need to watch, you just like to listen, please check it out on all those platforms. And we will see you all next week. Take care.